She woke up, blinking against the harsh hospital lights, the memories of searing pain still fresh. As her eyes adjusted, a doctor stood by her bed, a gentle yet certain expression on his face. Little does she know that the doctor is about to reveal something that would bring her rage and questioning beliefs. Things were about to take a nasty turn at the hospital. Evelyn Moore had always trusted science above all else. At 52, she had earned a reputation as a brilliant biologist who fiercely championed facts over beliefs. Her career spanned over 3 decades, and her research papers had contributed groundbreaking insights into the world of cellular biology. Evelyn didn't tolerate ambiguity, nor did she believe in anything beyond the physical world. Raised in a small, working-class town, Evelyn lost her parents to illnesses she viewed as preventable, and this tragedy shaped her determination to pursue science, to believe only in what she could study and prove. Evelyn was only a child, and growing up she had watched her mother, a teacher, struggle with rheumatoid arthritis. Her father, a truck driver, had passed away in a car accident when Evelyn was a teenager. The small town had rallied around her mother, with neighbors and family members offering to help. Evelyn noticed, however, how her mother found comfort in her faith, often attending church and talking about God's plan. Evelyn, on the other hand, felt abandoned by the very concept of a higher power. To her, her father's death and mother's suffering were evidence that, if there was a God, he wasn't interested in helping. By the time she entered college, Evelyn had made up her mind. She would put her faith in science, in something real. But now, Evelyn found herself in a situation she couldn't understand. She lay in a hospital bed, barely able to recall what had happened. Evelyn's mind drifted back, trying to remember what had happened before everything went dark. She'd been driving home after a long day at the lab, the rain pouring so hard that it was difficult to see. Her windshield wipers moved back and forth quickly, but the road still looked blurry. Out of nowhere, she saw headlights coming from the side. Another car was speeding toward her, and she barely had time to react. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, and suddenly there was a loud screech of tires and the sound of metal crashing. The impact slammed her against the door, her seatbelt pulling tight across her chest. Her head hit the window, and her vision went blurry. Her car spun around from the force of the collision, and for a moment she felt like everything was moving in slow motion. She heard voices shouting in the distance, but then everything went black. Dr. David Carter, at 63, was a highly respected surgeon with decades of experience. He'd faced it all: hopeless cases, miraculous recoveries, and families hanging on to every word he spoke. His career was one of skill and dedication, but what truly set him apart was his unwavering faith. Raised by parents who were both ministers, David grew up learning the values of compassion and trust in a higher power. That faith carried him through the toughest moments of his career, when surgeries didn't go as planned or when he had to deliver heartbreaking news. Though he never pushed his beliefs on others, he always prayed before every surgery, finding strength in those quiet moments. His most treasured reminder of that faith was a small silver cross necklace. His grandmother had given it to him when his younger sister, Emily, passed away at just 10 years old. That loss had left a scar in his heart, but his grandmother's quiet faith and her words,
"Even in the darkest times, there's hope,"
stayed with him. From that day on, the cross became his source of strength, especially during life's hardest challenges. As he prepared for Evelyn's surgery, Dr. Carter, as always, brushed his fingers over the necklace and whispered a quiet prayer.
"Lord, guide my hands."
With that, he stepped into the operating room, ready to fight for her life. Dr. Carter entered the operating room, his mind calm and focused, the silver cross tucked beneath his scrubs, pressing lightly against his chest. Around him, the team was prepped and ready, the beeping of machines filling the sterile room. Evelyn's injuries were severe: multiple broken ribs, internal bleeding, and a collapsed lung. Time was not on their side.
"All right, everyone,"
Dr. Carter said, his voice steady.
"This is going to be a long one. Let's work together and give her every chance."
The surgical lights bathed the room in harsh brightness as they began. Dr. Carter's hands moved with practiced precision, guided by years of experience and unwavering focus. The team worked in sync, each person playing their part to stabilize Evelyn. But it wasn't easy. Her injuries were worse than expected, and every step forward seemed to bring a new complication. Halfway through the surgery, Evelyn's blood pressure began to drop alarmingly. The heart monitor let out a shrill, continuous beep, and the team sprang into action.
"Code blue,"
one of the nurses shouted, her voice tense. Dr. Carter froze for a split second, his mind racing. Her heart had stopped. This was the moment he dreaded most in any surgery, the thin line between life and death. His fingers instinctively brushed against the cross, through his scrubs. a brief but grounding gesture.
Adrenaline, now!
He barked, his voice firm but calm. The nurse quickly administered the dose while another team member prepared the defibrillator. Dr. Carter placed the paddles against Evelyn's chest, his voice steady as he called,
Clear!
The jolt made her body twitch, but the heart monitor remained flat. A second shock, then a third, still nothing. The room grew tense, the weight of the moment pressing down on everyone.
Come on, Evelyn.
Dr. Carter muttered under his breath, his fingers tightening around the paddles. He glanced at the clock, 2 minutes without a heartbeat. His team looked at him expectantly, waiting for his call.
Again,
he said, determination sharpening his tone. Another shock and then a blip. A weak, irregular rhythm appeared on the monitor. Relief washed over the team, though the battle was far from over. Dr. Carter worked quickly, repairing the damage with a precision that only came from years of practice and unshakable focus. Hours later, as the final sutures were placed, the room fell quiet. Evelyn's vitals had stabilized and the worst was over. Dr. Carter exhaled deeply, his shoulders sagging slightly as the tension left his body. He turned to the team, offering a tired but genuine smile.
Good work, everyone,
he said.
She's got a tough road ahead, but we gave her a chance.
As the team began to clean up, Dr. Carter lingered for a moment. His eyes rested on Evelyn, her face pale but peaceful beneath the oxygen mask. He reached for the cross beneath his scrubs, closing his eyes briefly.
Thank you,
he whispered silently, the words a mix of relief and gratitude. Later that night, after finishing his rounds, Dr. Carter sat in the quiet of his office, replaying the events of the surgery in his mind. Despite his best efforts, the image of Evelyn's still heart lingered. It was moments like these that reminded him of the fragility of life and how close they'd come to losing her. He knew not every patient made it, no matter how skilled the surgeon or advanced the technology. That knowledge weighed on him more heavily with each passing year. But Evelyn had pulled through, and for that, he was grateful. As he removed his coat and hung it on the back of his chair, he touched the cross again, a faint smile crossing his face. The day had been long, but he had done what he could. Now it was up to Evelyn to fight for her recovery. A short while later, Dr. Carter entered Evelyn's room, his calm, steady presence immediately filling the space. Tall and broad-shouldered, his grey hair was neatly combed back, framing a face lined with experience but softened by kindness. His hazel eyes, sharp yet warm, carried a quiet assurance, while a neatly trimmed silver-streaked beard added to his composed appearance. His slightly wrinkled blue scrubs hinted at a long day, and the silver cross around his neck gleamed faintly as he moved, resting just beneath his collarbone. Despite the weight of his work, his step was light, and his faint smile reflected both compassion and unwavering resolve.
Good to see you awake, Ms. Moore,
Dr. Carter said, pulling up a chair beside her bed.
You've been through quite a lot, but you're stable now. That's what matters.
Evelyn blinked, her mind still foggy, but her gaze caught something unexpected. A small silver cross hanging from a thin chain around his neck. It rested against his scrubs, catching the overhead light.
Is that a cross?
She asked, her voice scratchy and weak. Dr. Carter instinctively touched the necklace.
It is,
he said softly.
I always wear it.
Evelyn's brow furrowed.
You wear that while you're working?
Always. It's important to me. A reminder.
Evelyn stared at him, her exhaustion momentarily replaced with irritation.
What does a cross have to do with a surgery? You're a doctor, not a priest.
Dr. Carter chuckled lightly.
It's not about being a priest, Ms. Moore. It's about staying grounded. This cross reminds me that no matter how skilled I am, there are things in life beyond my control.
Her irritation flared.
Beyond your control? You think some invisible force saved me, not your years of medical training?
Dr. Carter remained calm.
I think it was both, my training and God's guidance.
Evelyn scoffed loudly.
God's guidance? So if I hadn't pulled through, that would have been part of His plan? Do you even hear yourself?
Dr. Carter's tone stayed steady.
Faith doesn't always make sense, Ms. Moore. It's about hope when the outcome isn't clear.
Evelyn's voice rose.
Hope? You gambled my life on hope? You should be relying on facts, not some imaginary guidance.
Dr. Carter's jaw tightened, but he kept his composure.
I relied on my training every step of the way, but I also prayed for clarity and strength. That's what helps me stay focused during critical moments.
You're telling me that in the middle of trying to save my life, you stopped to pray?
Evelyn snapped.
That's insane.
A nurse peeked into the room, concern in her eyes.
Is everything all right?
Dr. Carter raised a hand to reassure her.
Everything's fine.
he said gently, turning back to Evelyn.
I understand this might sound strange to you, but faith helps me focus and stay grounded so I can do my job. That's all.
Evelyn let out a bitter laugh.
If I'd known you were praying instead of relying on your skill, I would have asked for someone else.
Dr. Carter leaned forward slightly, his voice firm.
With all due respect, Ms. Moore, I used every ounce of my training to save your life. You're here because of both science and faith, whether you like it or not.
The tension in the room was thick as Evelyn crossed her arms weakly, glaring at him. Dr. Carter sighed and stood, his expression softening.
I'll leave you to rest.
He said quietly.
If you'd like to continue this conversation later, I'm happy to. For now, focus on getting better.
Evelyn watched him leave, her chest heaving slightly from the effort of the argument. The nurse stepped back in, giving her a hesitant look.
Would you like some water, Ms. Moore?
She asked gently. Evelyn waved her off, turning her gaze to the window. The silver cross still lingered in her mind, its quiet presence more irritating than she wanted to admit. Evelyn sat in silence after Dr. Carter left, her irritation simmering beneath the surface. The nerve of him talking about faith as though it had anything to do with saving her life. She stared out the window, watching the grey clouds shift in the sky, but the cross around his neck was all she could think about. The thought of someone like him, a man of science, a surgeon, relying on something so intangible unsettled her deeply. She had built an entire career on logic, evidence, and proof. To her, faith was nothing more than wishful thinking, a coping mechanism for people who couldn't handle the truth. And yet, despite her anger, she couldn't shake the calm certainty in Dr. Carter's voice, the steady confidence that had carried him through their argument. The next morning, Evelyn woke to the sounds of the hospital, the faint hum of machines, footsteps in the hallway, and the distant chatter of nurses. Her body still ached, but her mind felt sharper. She remembered her argument with Dr. Carter vividly and resolved not to let it bother her any longer. But as the day went on, something else grabbed her attention. From the room next door, she began to hear a child's voice. It was soft and filled with a quiet determination that immediately caught her attention.
Thank you, God, for helping me get stronger.
The boy said.
Please keep helping the doctors and my mum, too.
Evelyn frowned, straining to hear more. The boy couldn't have been older than 10, his words clear but gentle. She could hear the faint sound of a woman's voice as well, likely his mother, encouraging him softly. The voice returned later that evening, and this time Evelyn caught more of the conversation.
Are you scared, sweetheart?
The woman asked.
No,
The boy replied.
God's taking care of me. I just know it.
Evelyn rolled her eyes, turning her head away from the sound. How could a child put so much trust in something he couldn't see? And why did everyone around her seem so determined to bring faith into this hospital? First Dr. Carter, now this boy. The following morning, as a nurse came to check Evelyn's vitals, she hesitated before speaking.
Can I ask you something?
She said, her voice soft but curious. Nurse Sarah looked up from her clipboard, offering a kind smile.
Of course. What's on your mind?
Evelyn shifted slightly, her body still sore from the surgery.
My surgery. How bad was it? I mean, I know it was serious, but what happened?
Sarah's expression softened. She pulled a chair closer to Evelyn's bed, sitting down beside her.
It was touch and go for a while.
She admitted gently.
You had severe internal injuries, a collapsed lung, broken ribs, and a lot of internal bleeding. At one point, your heart stopped.
Evelyn's eyes widened.
It stopped?
Nurse Sarah nodded solemnly.
Yes, for almost 2 minutes. Dr. Carter and the team worked tirelessly to bring you back. He used the defibrillator and administered adrenaline. It was intense, but Dr. Carter never gave up. When your heart started beating again, there wasn't a dry eye in the room.
Evelyn swallowed hard, the weight of her words settling over her.
He saved my life.
She murmured, her voice almost a whisper. Sarah smiled.
Yes, he did. Dr. Carter is one of the best. He's calm under pressure, and he truly cares about his patients.
Evelyn nodded slowly, unsure of how to process the information. Her mind replayed the nurse's words. Her heart had stopped. She had come close to not making it. A mix of gratitude and disbelief swirled inside her. Nurse Sarah continued checking her vitals before pausing again.
By the way, I noticed you've been glancing toward the room next door. Have you been hearing Noah?
Evelyn hesitated but nodded.
Yes. Who is he?
Sarah smiled softly.
That's Noah. He's 8 years old and has been battling leukemia for the past year. His mother stays with him most of the time. He's one of the sweetest and bravest kids I've ever met.
Evelyn's chest tightened at the nurse's words. She couldn't imagine what it must feel like to be so young and face something so terrifying.
Does he always pray like that?
She asked cautiously. Sarah nodded.
Every day. He believes it helps, and honestly, I think it does. He's been through so much, but he's still full of hope.
Evelyn stared at her hands, the boy's words from the night before echoing in her mind. She couldn't understand how someone so young could have such unwavering faith in the face of something so uncertain. The nurse's voice interrupted her thoughts.
If you'd like, I can bring Noah in to meet you. He's very curious about the people around him.
Evelyn blinked, surprised by the offer.
Bring him here?
Sarah nodded.
Yes, he loves meeting new people, and I think you might find him inspiring.
Evelyn hesitated, unsure of how to respond. Part of her wanted to say no. After all, what would she even say to a boy like Noah? But another part of her, quieter but persistent, was curious.
All right,
She said finally.
you can bring him.
Sarah smiled warmly.
I let him know I'm sure he'll be thrilled.
The next morning, Evelyn woke to the familiar hum of the hospital. As she adjusted her position, careful not to pull the IV lines, she heard a knock at her door. Before she could respond, the door opened slightly and Nurse Sarah peeked in with a warm smile.
Good morning, Ms. Moore.
She said.
I hope I'm not disturbing you.
Evelyn blinked, surprised by the unexpected visit.
No, not at all.
She replied, her voice still groggy.
I brought someone to meet you.
The nurse said, stepping aside to reveal Noah standing shyly behind her. He was smaller than Evelyn expected, his frame frail, his skin pale, but his eyes sparkled with a warmth and innocence that caught her off guard. He clutched a stuffed dinosaur tightly in one hand, his other hand gripping the hem of his mother's sweater.
Hi.
He said softly, his voice polite but timid. Evelyn forced a smile, unsure of what to say.
Hello, Noah.
Sarah nudged him gently and he stepped forward, looking at Evelyn with wide, curious eyes.
Nurse Sarah said you were in an accident.
He said.
Are you feeling better?
Evelyn hesitated, surprised by the genuine concern in his voice.
I'm recovering.
She said, finally.
It's slow, but I'm getting there.
Noah nodded solemnly as though his words carried great weight.
I prayed for you.
He said, matter-of-factly. Evelyn's eyebrows shot up in surprise.
You did?
Yeah.
Noah said, his voice steady.
I heard you were hurt and I asked God to help you feel better.
Evelyn glanced at Sarah, who smiled encouragingly. She didn't know how to respond. Part of her wanted to dismiss it, to tell Noah that his prayers had nothing to do with her recovery, but something about the way he looked at her and the quiet confidence in his voice made her pause.
Thank you, Noah.
She said finally, her voice softer than expected. Noah smiled, clearly pleased by her response.
You're welcome. God listens, you know. Even if you don't talk to him, he's still there.
Evelyn opened her mouth to reply, but no words came out. How could an 8-year-old say something so simple yet so profound? She had spent her entire life avoiding conversations like this, dismissing faith as a crutch. Yet, here was a child, facing something far more terrifying than she ever had, speaking about it with certainty and trust.
Come on, sweetheart.
Sarah said gently, placing a hand on Noah's shoulder.
Let's let Miss Moore rest.
Noah nodded but looked back at Evelyn as he left.
I hope you feel better soon.
He said with a smile before disappearing into the hallway with the nurse. Evelyn stared at the door long after they were gone, her mind swirling with thoughts she couldn't quite organize. Meeting Noah, a child facing so much uncertainty with unshakable faith, left her shaken in a way she hadn't expected. His quiet trust in something she had always dismissed as imaginary didn't seem naive anymore. It seemed brave. And then there was Dr. Carter, the man who had saved her life. She had clung to the idea that science alone had brought her through, but now she wasn't so sure. Dr. Carter's faith hadn't made him weaker or distracted. If anything, it had given him the strength to focus and fight for her when her own heart had stopped. For the last time, Evelyn wondered if there was more to life than what she could see or measure. Maybe faith wasn't the enemy of science, but a source of strength, a way to find hope in the darkest moments. It wasn't an answer, but it was a question she couldn't ignore. And for Evelyn, that changed everything. Later that day, Dr. Carter came to check on Evelyn. He entered the room with his usual calm demeanor, his clipboard in hand and a faint gleam of his silver cross visible against his scrubs. Evelyn noticed it immediately, her thoughts flashing back to her conversation with Noah. This time, however, instead of irritation, she felt a pang of guilt. She'd spent so much time focusing on what she didn't believe in, what she couldn't prove, that she had ignored one undeniable truth. Dr. Carter had saved her life. Whatever his personal beliefs were, they hadn't taken away from his skill or his dedication. If anything, they seemed to have made him stronger, more grounded. And for the first time, Evelyn found herself wondering if she'd been too quick to judge. Dr. Carter approached her bed, giving her a warm smile.
Good to see you looking more alert today, Ms. Moore. How are you feeling?
Evelyn hesitated, her eyes flickering to the cross before meeting his gaze.
Better,
She said finally, her tone softer than it had been before.
thanks to you.
Dr. Carter nodded, his smile remaining steady.
I'm glad to hear that. You've been through a lot, but you're making good progress. Keep up the strength.
Evelyn took a deep breath, the words she wanted to say catching in her throat. She had always prided herself on being direct, but this felt different. This was harder. Finally, she said,
Dr. Carter, I owe you an apology
He raised an eyebrow, clearly surprised.
An apology? For what?
for the way I spoke to you.
Evelyn said, her voice steady but low.
I've been so focused on my own beliefs, on what I think is right, that I didn't take the time to appreciate what you've done for me. I was dismissive and rude, and that wasn't fair to you.
Dr. Carter's expression softened and he pulled up the chair beside her bed.
Ms. Moore, I don't take those things personally. I understand that being in a situation like this can be overwhelming, but I appreciate your words.
Evelyn glanced at the cross again before continuing.
I've been thinking a lot about what you said about faith, about hope. I still don't know if I believe in all of that, but I can see how much it means to you and how it helps you do what you do, and I respect that.
Dr. Carter nodded, his voice gentle.
Faith is personal, Ms. Moore. It's not something I expect everyone to share, but if it helps me be a better doctor, a better person, then I think it's worth holding on to.
Evelyn felt a small smile tug at her lips.
I guess I can't argue with that. Whatever it is you believe in, it works. You saved my life, and for that, I'm grateful.
Dr. Carter leaned back in his chair, a faint smile on his face.
You're here because you fought, Ms. Moore. My job was to give you a chance. You did the rest.
She shook her head.
No, you're being modest. I saw the nurse's face when she told me how critical things were. You didn't just give me a chance, you gave me everything, and I'll never forget that.
For a moment, the room was quiet, the tension between them replaced with something warmer, more understanding. Evelyn didn't feel the need to argue or push her beliefs onto him. Instead, she found herself appreciating the man before her, not just a doctor, but as someone who genuinely cared about the people he treated.
Thank you,
She said again, her voice firmer this time.
for saving my life and for being patient with me. You didn't have to, but you were.
Dr. Carter stood, his smile returning.
It's my job, Ms. Moore, and it's also who I am. I'm just glad to see you getting better.
As he left the room, Evelyn leaned back against her pillow, a strange sense of calm settling over her. She didn't suddenly believe in miracles or divine intervention, but she did believe in something she hadn't considered before. The strength that faith could bring to those who needed it. And perhaps in her own way, she had needed it too. Christian bride marries disabled man and receives the most unbelievable surprise on her wedding day.